This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and welcome to episode 306 of the FCPA Compliance Report. The FCPA Compliance Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop to all things compliance-related services. Today I have with me Linda Lattimore. Linda is the founder of Cross-Sector Institute, which is a community and educational platform by and for global citizens who seek to share and receive knowledge in a world where social responsibility has become the norm and no longer the exception. She has developed a platform for not only sharing information on social responsibility and social responsibility obligations and services, but also has provided an educational component. It is a very interesting concept. There are lots of CSR folks out there, but Linda has put together a platform which teaches the compliance practitioner what their obligations are under CSR. The episode comes in at just over 20 minutes. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening. And I need to note the audio is not up to standard today, so I apologize in advance. But thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today I have with me Linda Lattimore. Linda and I were on a State Bar Texas trip to Cuba earlier this year, and I found out about a really interesting initiative that she was putting together, which she has gone live with, which is called Cross-Sector Law, and it deals with corporate social responsibility. And I've visited with others on that topic on this podcast, but Linda comes at it from a very different angle. So, Linda, with that somewhat long-winded introduction, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Lots to talk about.
Yeah, so I guess let's just start off telling the audience a little bit about yourself, and then what you see the role of lawyers in corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and then how did you get to cross-sector law, and what's that all about?
Okay, all right. So, oh my God, I've practiced law for a gazillion years, like a number of other lawyers, and my background has been general counsel of 2 or 3 multinational companies, and also I was the head of the fraud section at the U.S. Attorney's Office for a number of years, prosecuting white-collar crime cases. And so that is maybe obviously very vigilant when it comes to things like compliance, which is helping in good stead also as chief compliance officer for a couple of these companies. One of the things that I noticed along my path was that in setting up some of these departments, supply chain had become the enforcer of social responsibility programs. So we kind of have to take a look at what's going on in the marketplace out there. We all know that, the last couple of decades have been rife with all kinds of, corporate debacles everywhere from the MCIs to the Enrons and the Adelphias and a number of other companies that really got themselves into problems. And, with that, we started seeing a number of different laws come in terms of compliance. But we also saw that the general public was, really coming forth with a hue and cry, asking for transparency on everything. So thus comes the social responsibility movement, which has really been around for a really, really, really long time. It's not something that just showed up the last couple of years. I mean, people started advocating for social responsibility initiatives way back just in, the Prohibition area even. So, but it's really, really apparent now, and it's now the norm. It's no longer sort of a nice-to-have. Every company is now being faced with having a lot of social responsibility programs. And I just didn't feel like our lawyers were keeping up to date with that. And so I started looking at it from a more holistic point of view and decided that maybe it's time that we shared our knowledge with each other in our various silos. Tom, I kind of feel like we have become as lawyers very vertical in our practices.
Right.
We don't have like a general practitioner for medicine anymore. You have your arm doctor and your leg doctor and your heart doctor. Well, we've done the same thing in our practices of law. Everyone is very specialized in a particular area. But what these companies are facing today is having to create social responsibility strategies that concern employee benefits, that concern green initiatives, that concern FCPA and compliance initiatives, SOX, if it's a public company. And the lawyers tend to be very, very, stuck in one particular expertise, but what they're not doing is looking at it holistically for the entire company, where they might know one thing, but they might not really understand the impact of something else. And I just felt like it was time to bring all that knowledge together, hopefully in a platform where we can share that knowledge.
How does cross-sector law do that? How does it break those silos down, number one, and then number two, allow either, a solo guy, a practitioner, or perhaps even a business person to utilize the broad base of knowledge around corporate social responsibility?
So it's a pretty new. It's really just a few months old. So we're in a gathering mode right now. I've been looking for other attorneys who would like to teach a particular topic around that has a social responsibility angle to it, not just a standard CLE class that could be for anything, but one that really is in this space. And so it's attracting in, people that really do have an expertise. Nick Evanoff has shown up. He's been general counsel of a handful of public companies, and so he's been very interested in teaching some classes on all of the disclosure requirements that we're now faced with that maybe we didn't know before. There's new SEC reporting requirements. He's got a strong class on Dodd-Frank. And so we have another lawyer. I'm a Turner that had some experience, for example, at Marathon in CSR, and exactly what are some of the issues that we're faced when we go into another country. Then they require us to, have some local content, use local people, perhaps build a school. I mean, what is our responsibility to these cultures and these countries when we exit that country, for example? Then we have another lawyer, Christy Morgan-Aronica, who is a government contracts lawyer, and of course, federal contractors are faced with all kinds of different requirements these days, with green initiatives to everything else, and a lot of them don't really have a sense of what they are exactly. They rely on their lawyers. But you might have an environmental lawyer who understands a piece of it. You might have a contracts lawyer. But it's time we all had one space to go and look at this information together. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for other people who want to contribute, because I think there's a collective wisdom here that we have to share if we really are going to understand how to move forward. I can't tell you actually how many lawyers, particularly lawyers out of some of the law firms, not so much the internal counsel, actually say to me, what is corporate social responsibility? They still have in their mindset that it's a matter of writing a philanthropy check through some kind of philanthropy committee inside a corporation, when actually it is so much bigger than that. It affects every department of the company. So
you're absolutely right. And what I see even in corporations, sophisticated multinational corporations today, is exactly the siloed nature that you're talking about there. It's rare, particularly for a lawyer, whether that lawyer is in the legal department, compliance department, or some other department, to understand what you've termed the holistic approach, but really the big picture within their company, or even the strategic initiatives that they're putting forth. They either work on the proposals, they work on the delivery systems, they work on the contracts. Nobody works on the exit strategy. So that is really a great way to think about corporate social responsibility. Do you have a chance, or do you envision this platform as being available for the business aspect as well, or is it for lawyers only?
Absolutely. I mean, I tell you, when I originally started thinking about it, I was only working on one particular class. What I really wanted to look at was an ethics class for lawyers, because, our ethics codes generally talk about our duties to our clients, to the judge, and to the other lawyers, but it never actually says anything about our duties back into our community until you really go and look at it, and you look at some of the comments within those sections, and you can see that we have a lot of leeway to participate in some of these initiatives. So I had pulled together a class an ethics class for lawyers about some of the conflicts and some of the challenges that our clients are facing and that are causing us to face too. And what do we do about it? Our clients, for example, are now being told by the investors and by the customers that they need to be concerned with a lot of multi-stakeholders. Like, everybody has to be thought of and taken into consideration anymore. Well, as lawyers, we're used to just representing a singular issue, a singular client. We're not used to having to think about all the other stakeholders, too, and make sure that it's a win-win situation for all. We're used to having confidential relationships. Now the word transparency is big out there. So there's a whole slew of challenges that are beginning to show up that we've never really had to deal with as a practice. So that was my first entrance into it, and then I began to look at another class that I started putting together for internal counsels. Many times our corporate lawyers within the corporations are not actually get to be a part of the strategy. They're told often, you just worry about the legal terms and conditions on the contract. You don't need to get involved with the business. The business is doing business. You just handle the legal. But no longer is the business just doing business. It's changing everywhere, and our lawyers do need to be part of the strategy. They do need to be able to see the whole picture, not just a small piece. And so, we're beginning to have some dialogue with internal counsel, say, how can we be part of this as change agents as well as this new business paradigm comes into place?
Linda, in your press release announcing this new initiative, you listed some of the, if not classes, general topics that will be covered. And I wanted to maybe list these and have you talk about what these classes or offerings would entail and perhaps some of the others that you envision. So we've got ethics in the new world of corporate social responsibility. You talked to us about that. But then I was intrigued by the next next three. Transparency and human rights at the drill bit, near and dear to my energy heart.
Right.
Measuring change and communicating impact, best practices, and then corporate governance and other CPIs. So could you tell us a little bit about those and maybe some of the other either classes you have up or ones that you envision going forward with?
Well, Nick is teaching, for example, having a background as a general counsel of two public companies in the energy business. He was very interested in some of the reporting requirements that are showing up. I am not an energy lawyer, so I can't tell you exactly what his class is about other than what you're seeing on the schedule there. But I think I'd have to go back in and look. Honestly, Tom, I think that might be one of the ones with the Dodd-Frank requirements. But he's also looking at, for example, a lot of the stock exchanges and the global stock exchanges now have new reporting requirements. Singapore, UK, many of these companies are making sure that we are reporting. And so he, on that other class he's getting ready to teach that. I don't remember when the dates are. They'll be actually looking at, okay, here's what you need to look at when you're in this country. Here's what you need to look at in that country. I mean, we think about India, for example. India has a new 2% rule. It's one of the few countries that are out there actually have made it a law that 2% of, I think it's your net proceeds over 5 years have to go into have to go into social responsibility projects. An awful lot of our clients, are doing business in India. They may not realize that is something that they have to do now. So, in fact, recently I was speaking at a conference, and a number of it wasn't to lawyers. It was a different kind of conference, actually a humanitarian conference, and they were all saying they had some businesses in India and they had no idea what was going on. I mean, very few people really know that 31 states have passed benefits corporations, which actually allow corporations to take into consideration not just the singular bottom line, but also to take into consideration, public things, community impact, planetary impact, and everything else. And, these flexible purpose corporations are showing up everywhere. Texas has one as well. It's not a benefits corporation, but we do have a flexible purpose, which means we can change our articles of incorporation saying that, in fact, we do have a special purpose in addition to trying to make money for our stockholders. So cross-sector law is actually set up, because it's an educational platform, it's not a law firm, it's actually set up as a special purpose corporation itself, because I believe we need to walk the talk.
Well, and that brings me to my next point, which is you set up an initiative which you call Cross-Sector Gives. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Cross-Sector Gives is it's a giving program. That sounds kind of trite. It's where we've picked 13 different charities sort of within the social responsibility space. In other words, we have some that are on policy, we have some that are environmental, we have some, they've all been vetted, and we just want folks to be able to go in if they register for a class online, that 10% of those class proceeds will go to one of those charities. They can choose which one. There's a drop-down that allows them to choose which one, so that we feel like, we're also giving back. So we're teaching and we're trying to share our wisdom, and I really think acting as vanguards out there, that it is a group of socially responsible lawyers who are trying to share what they know with other socially responsible lawyers, and at the same time give back into their communities. And I hope, as this thing begins to come together, that we'll actually come together as a group and perhaps do some community work together. And I know I've reached out to Lawyers Without Borders and some of the other groups that are trying to do actual hands-on work in particular areas. So, but that's premature right now. As I say, we're too young right now to get to that. But that's a vision as this group grows.
Linda, if someone wanted to find out more information on either cross-sector law or more specifically some of the offerings that you have in place, how would they do so? Well,
they would just go to the website. So, if you Google cross-sector law, it will come up. Also, it's X, because cross-sector law had 3 S's. It was way too many, so it's X, SECTOR law, and they can look there as well. The other thing that is getting ready to go up in the next couple of months is that I think what's happening in so many instances is the smaller vendors of these companies, many of them do not have social responsibility programs in place. And because supply chain and the major corporations have within all of their agreements these attachments that require vendors to have green initiatives and diversity initiatives and a ton of, if it's government contracts for sure, a ton of other initiatives. The smaller companies will do one of 2 things. They'll either go ahead and bid, and they don't have the requirements in place, and then later on perhaps they're not audited. And then the day that it's time to start doing cutbacks or whatever else, of course, it finds out that they're in breach of the contract almost immediately, and so sometimes they're the first to go. Or they don't even try and bid. They're straight up about it. They don't have the programs. And so many times they have some of the best pricing, but they're not in the game. They're just not in the game at all because they don't even know where to begin to create a social responsibility program. So very shortly we'll go up our social responsibility toolkit where these vendors can go online and take, I think it's like a 7 or 8 module class, and create some very basic programs, but which will allow them to create a sustainability report of sorts that they can then at least use to go bid on some of the larger programs with some of the bigger companies so that they're, in the game. So I see that'll be under our program Cross-Sector Advantage, which will offer some consulting work and then also offer these programs to some of the smaller vendors. So although it started out initially with accredited classes for lawyers, we've seen that the demand is there for the rest of the market as well for this information, so we're trying to put that together for them now.
Well, as someone who looks at this process and a wide variety of different NGOs, corporations, and kind of compliance programs, I certainly see the need for one place you can go for both educational services and consulting. So kudos for having the vision to put this together, and I really look forward to hearing more about you and cross-sector and your journey going forward.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate a chance to tell people about it because I'm really open. Anyone that wants to come play and come be part of this group, please reach out to me. Pretty easy to find. You can, find me right on the website, as a matter of fact.
Speaking of that, if someone wanted to email you, could they do so, and if so, how would they do it?
Yes, they would just write, I think it's Linda.Lattimore at xlectorlaw.com.
Great.
That'd be great.
Linda, thank you very much for taking the time to visit with me.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance Report, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode.